Hey, Live on Purpose family, thank you for your comments and your questions. Some of them I don't even know how to answer, like who has custody of a child born out of wedlock? But I got resources and I brought him in. I love having you viewers comment and ask questions. This generates some of the content that we create here on the channel. Matt, you wrote in asking about who has custody of a child who's born out of wedlock, and I don't know. So I went and found Sid, because as an attorney, you're more familiar, Sid, with how this plays out, and I think you've had some experience with
quite a bit.
This particular issue. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that question?
Yeah, this is one of those things that the world is easier when everybody knows that there's a relationship, usually a marriage relationship, and children are born within the marriage.
That's clear.
The law is very clear that whoever is born within a marriage is the product of that marriage. At least that's the presumption. Now, sometimes there's mixing up with that because, people sometimes fool around, which is unfortunate. But when a child is born out of wedlock, then a whole bunch of things happen. A whole bunch of decisions need to be made. What's going to happen? Who's going to support the child? One thing that people don't focus on, and I just want to mention this right up front, is the child, once the child is born, the child has rights. People are focusing all the time on their own rights, but the child has a right in every state of the United States, every territory, to be supported by two parents. And so that's a very interesting
That's the presumption. That's what the
presumption,
law
and that's what the
presumes.
law presumes, and what the law enforces. So, for example, if a child is born out of wedlock, obviously the mother has custody of the child to begin with, unless there's some reason that she doesn't. There's a drug reason or something like that, and the child's taken away when the child's born, which it isn't luckily very often.
Right.
But a mother has rights, and she has presumed custody. However, the father of the child, if he knows that he has a child, and I want to talk about that a little bit later, but if the child is born and the father knows that he has a child, the father has rights, and he even has rights to custody. Technically, in Utah, and I practice in Utah, and technically the father has the same rights as the mother. So, for example, if the mother is not able to watch the child and she takes the child to daycare, or has the child being watched by her own mother or father or something like that, and the father shows up, he's the parent, and a parent has presumptive rights over everybody else except for the other parent, because each parent has equal rights.
Wow.
So I have had a case where a father went and grabbed the child, his newborn baby, who was only 4 or 5 weeks old, from the grandparents of the child, the maternal grandparents of the child, while the mom was at work. And he took the child and then wouldn't give him back. And then, of course, the mother comes to me, hey, I have custody because I had the child and he's been in my care for 4 months and I'm nursing and everything. And I had to explain to her, number one, Dad has just as much custody as you do. Now, don't get me wrong, that wasn't a good move on Dad's part.
You're not recommending
No,
this.
I'm not recommending that at all.
No.
Because, of course, interrupting the child, again, one of the focuses that everybody needs to have is we need to focus on the best interest of the child.
Of the child.
Is it really good? And I've talked in other videos about war, creating a war situation. And in the beginning, we don't want to create war. We don't want to create war ever if we can avoid it. But it's best to somehow be cooperative. But who has custody? Both parents have equal custody. The mother has presumed custody to begin with, but the father has just as much rights to custody and to sue for custody. So there's some hard choices to make. One of the choices is, can this couple possibly work out? Quite often when a child's born out of wedlock, there's almost no chance that the parents are going to get married. My experience is, and I have about 28 years experience right now, my experience is that if someone finds out they're pregnant and they're not married yet and they want to stay together, they're probably going to get married before the child's born, so that the child is born with both
within
parents
that
intact
marriage.
and within the marriage,
Right.
and within that family. Don't get me wrong, there are families that were never married, that have 5, 6 children, they're together, they're going to be together forever, it seems like,
and they're doing fine.
But that's rare. It's more common that the pregnancy sometimes breaks up the relationship, or there just wasn't a stable relationship to begin with. So the custody, the initial simple answer is that they both have equal custody, and the mother has presumed a little bit more custody because typically mothers can nurse and fathers can't. I mean, that's physiology. But the father has every right. The other situation, and this is what I hinted to earlier, that's a little tricky, is mothers sometimes, and I have this situation right now. I have a mother who's come to me. She knows who the father is, but he has no idea that she's pregnant. And she wants to give up the child for adoption. The laws in the United States, and these are in Utah, the United States has passed some laws that require notification to a potential father
before an adoption
can happen, or any change in custody like that. However, each state has its own laws about how to enact that, how to make that work. And in Utah, a father, if he has sex, or if a person has sex and could possibly lead to a child, he has a duty to register with the state and say, hey, I might be having a child.
Oh, like that's going to happen.
Right, like that's going to happen. I actually had a guy come into me one time saying, I heard through the grapevine that my girlfriend's pregnant, but I don't know where she lives. I don't know what her parents' names are. I don't know what to do about it. What can I do? And I said, well, let's look up the law. The law says you have to register. So we actually called while he was in my office.
We called the state.
The state. And they said, oh yeah, there's some form. You have to do this in Salt Lake. This was, they couldn't, this was before the days when they could email. So they were going to fax it to me. And I thought, really? And he had to sort of guess when the child might be born because, and guess he knew the first name of the girlfriend, but he didn't even know the last name.
This was the legal hoops that he had to jump through.
This is the legal hoops that he had
to establish his potential parental rights with this child.
Correct. And unfortunately, since he didn't know anything, for all we know, she went out of state. For all we know, I mean, we just don't know. And so he came to me about 2 years later, and he had finally tracked her down through the grapevine, through some friends, and found out that the child had been adopted out, and there was nothing we could do about it. So,
Sid, does this question depend on the state or the jurisdiction that someone lives in?
Yes.
Or are there federal laws around this?
There are federal guidelines, and each state must enact a law to somehow
to address it,
and to address how the father can be notified. But like I just mentioned, the one in Utah, that's all. And so on the other side of this, I've had women come to me and say, hey, I want to adopt my child out. I know who the father is, but I'm not really sure how to notify him right now. And I say, well, let's look on the state registry and see if anybody registered. And we've adopted several children out that way. That's sort of a sad thing. The other thing that happens...
Well, we're talking about little kids.
Yeah, we're talking about... Yeah.
Anyway.
The other thing that happens is that, let's say a girl gets pregnant and she knows who the father is. There's not really a chance that they're going to get together. And the dad does not want to have to pay child support. He could be 15 years old for all we know, or a 21-year-old who already has kids, and he doesn't want to have to pay another one. And so the mother's contemplating giving up for adoption. Well, guess who steps in quite often? Mother's parents. Grandparents often come in. I have grandparents that come in to me and say, oh, my daughter wants to give her child up for adoption, but I don't want one of my flesh and blood to be gone into some other family that we don't know. So what can I do to get the child away from my daughter? That happens a lot.
They want to get custody of their
child's
child.
Of their child's child. And that also causes a whole bunch of grief because it's sort of easy to prove that grandparents who are wealthy relatively and have everything they need are in a better position to provide for a child. And everyone thinks, oh, all I have to do is show the court that I'm in a better position and I can take the child away from my daughter. Not really true. Parents are presumed to know what's best for their own children, and even an unmarried young lady or an unmarried older lady, they're all presumed to know what's in the best interest of the children. So they actually have a presumptive right to decide, even over grandparents, and only if there's some kind of disability or drug addiction or something like that would cause the mother so that the court could be convinced that the mother can't make a good decision for some reason. Then maybe the grandparents or somebody else could try to nab that custody away.
Something's becoming very obvious here, Sid. And part of our job is to illuminate the obvious.
Exactly.
And hopefully this has been informative to you, but what's becoming obvious to me is that these issues can get very complicated. very quickly.
Absolutely.
And we get comments, and you and I have both been contacted because of some of the other videos we've done on this channel. You can look in the playlists and find a whole group of videos about child custody. Some of those we've done collaboratively. Here's the thing. If you were to contact us and say, what do I do in my case? We're going to respond that you need to have someone who's familiar with the laws of your state or jurisdiction, wherever you are. If you're in another country, that could be a whole other ball game than what we're dealing with here. You need to have someone on your team who can address these complex issues in a way that shows a familiarity with the law, specifically the local laws of your jurisdiction. And so I know already that if you reach out to us with specific questions like that, we are going to direct you back to getting someone on your team locally. Would you agree with this, Sid?
Absolutely. That's exactly right. As you said, this gets complicated fast.
Right.
It's not complicated who initially has custody. The mom has custody, the presumptive custody. Both parents have equal opportunity for custody and rights to visitation and to sue for custody. But the truth is, it gets complicated very fast.
Right.
And that's just true. So you'll need to find someone who's competent in the law in your own area. What some people do is they move to a different state to have the child, hoping that that law will take place. There is a Uniform Child Custody Jurisdiction Act in the United States. And so there is a law that most states have agreed to adopt. And so it's called an interstate compact concerning that law. And because of that law, there are a lot of those questions that are similar in each state. However, as Dr. Paul says here, you need to consult somebody in your own state who's competent and who understands the laws in your state.
And not every attorney knows family law.
Right, and that's another thing. I actually love family law because I love creating peace. I love creating where there's a potential for war. I like looking in the best interest of the children and encouraging my clients to look. If you're going to have this child out of wedlock and you have a dad out there, you've got to make sure that the children need both parents. Training after training after training. Psychologically, we need two parents. And that's just the truth. And the law requires that both parents support the child. And the child has a right to be supported by two parents. And not just monetarily, also emotionally and other ways. And that's just a wonderful thing. Or it can be a wonderful thing. But people need to step up. So I hope that answers and addresses the question.
I think it does. Thank you for that contribution today. Thanks, Sid, for your input. Sid's one of our Live on Purpose certified coaches. You can see him and the other coaches who are certified in this program at liveonpurpose.coach.